Hello. So today we're going to talk about the discourse around AI, and it's mostly off the back of an article you wrote, Josh. So I'll hand over to you and tell me a little bit about it.
Yes, very meta. We're going to talk about how we talk about AI, but I think so. I'll just flash the article up actually because there's a few things to probably speak to. It was actually inspired by a conversation, or sorry, an online article from Steve Klabnik. I don't know if you know Steve.
Yeah.
But but yeah, so he's a really good writer around a lot of stuff around tech, and has been in the industry for a long time. So he's sort of lived and breathed it. And yeah, so I sort of wrote this article about the sort of discourse around AI is broken, and yeah, so Steve sort of talked about a similar thing really, and how he was disappointed around just how we talk about AI. It seems to be quite a polarising debate in general. And there was loads of other articles that were sort of spawned around the same time. So there was this one from Thomas, who works for Fly.io. And I sort of understand the sentiment of what he was trying to get at with a heartfelt provocation around AI-assisted programming, but I felt like he came across as a bit of a dick.
Yeah, it didn't come across great, did it?
No, because it was sort of saying if you're not smart enough to use AI, then that's sort of your problem, which isn't always helpful.
This isn't great either, is it?
It's not a good way to win an argument, or at least get people on side, I feel. But I do agree with some of the points made in the article. But that sort of prompted me to write this sort of longer form piece on the discourse around AI, how there's a lot of noise around it, and how we can sort of engage more productively around AI. So I'm not going to keep the article up on screen, but I just wanted to sort of draw attention to it because that was what caused a lot of the conversation between me and you, actually.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this all the time. Like, it's extremely difficult to cut through the noise unless you're completely one way or completely the other. And even the recent sort of Apple paper, like, they took quite a sensational headline, and all the news outlets are like, "This is the end of AI. It's overhyped. It can't think. It can't reason. It's going to be devastating for the whole industry." But if you actually read the paper, they're surprised about things that LLMs can't do that no AI researcher should be surprised about. Like, it can't supply large numbers. It can't. Yeah, of course it can. It's not a computation engine. So, like, if you actually look at the paper, it's not actually that devastating. But I guess the problem is, you know, LLMs are getting good at certain classes of tasks. They do have these huge blind spots, and the camp on one side, like your Sam Altman saying, you know, we're near to digital super intelligence just around the corner, and then you've got, like, you know, Apple saying, like, can't think at all, and then, you know, the truth's somewhere in the middle, right? So it's not helpful, these voices popping up and going to one extreme or the other, but it's the only way to cut through the noise. And you have this issue with news outlets specifically where they simplify the point to an extent where it becomes false as well. So, and that happens with all tech articles, really. But
well, that's the thing. You need to make it. You need to translate it to a more general audience, and a lot of the nuance of this is in the detail, right? And I think that the sort of opening statement in this article I wrote was, it can be the most transformative thing of our time, and also like a load of bullshit and a load of stuff that is just complete snake oil. And I think it's really important for us to talk about what makes those things, like what makes that the case. Because I think, you know, I saw a terrifying thing actually today. Andy Bell posted it on LinkedIn, and it was AI, Gen AI, basically being used to fake footage of immigrants crossing the channel into the UK.
Wow,
and it was promoted by a sort of far right group, and it's very easy to create content that suits a narrative. And I can totally understand why AI, for the right reasons, gets a very bad rep there.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like such a broad thing to tar with the same brush, doesn't it? Like, when I'm reading like an anti-AI post, sometimes in my head I'll just replace the word AI with maths, like, because it just makes it sound hilarious. Like, maths is going to take over, and like, but like, it's because we've sort of like anthropomorphized it a bit. We've sort of made it this real entity. Like, it can think, and it is its own thing, and we should give it its own power to do what it wants. And it's just maths. So it's up to us what we allow it to do. So we need to be really careful about sort of like making it sound like some magical thing that can think and act like a human when really it's just a tool. As I mean, what we keep coming back to, and every time we talk about AI, is that it is just another tool in the toolbox, and there are going to be bad actors. There's going to be people using it for misinformation, just as
Mm.
they would any other tool. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really tricky. And yeah, to have a reasonable conversation with someone that's completely one way or the other is really difficult.
Yeah, I think, when I was writing this piece, I was like, what can we liken it to that it's not like, but has similar polarizing views around? And cryptocurrency was a big thing that I kept going back to, which is, crypto. We're not going to talk about crypto because that could be a separate debate in itself. But I do think, in the early days, crypto had the potential to have some useful, or still has the potential to be useful in a lot of ways. But I think it very quickly became, the hype machine narrative was that it was going to change the world. Everything should be on this decentralized thing, and yeah, it would be the most transformative tech of our time. But it's not really landed that way, has it?
No, I mean, yeah, yeah, I mean, you could get the same effect with like different kinds of ledgers. And like there was one year I went to AWS reInvent and there was so much blockchain hype. And I think they launched 3 blockchain products, of which I think 2 have been discontinued. So
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it,
Mm.
the, you don't, yeah, it was a tool looking for a problem.
Mm.
And I think we do see a bit of that with AI, where I mean, we've talked about like larger companies who feel like they're missing out.
Mm.
They'll have it on their agenda. We need to use AI, and then that's then the brief, and then it's like a hammer looking for a nut, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
what are we going to do? And the most simple ideas that don't really cut it are people just want to add a chatbot to everything, and
Mm.
that upsets me because that's like you, not upsets me, but it's kind of like the obvious thing that doesn't often work out well unless you put in enough time, because you can basically ask it anything, so your testing surface is huge and it can say
Mm.
anything, so you've got the funnel the wrong way. Like yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. I think we did a whole episode just around that, but it, it yeah, it gets a bad rep because it is being used in the wrong ways.
Mm.
But that
I,
doesn't make the technology itself bad. It
yeah.
makes it bad for those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the challenge is that, so when you reference sort of big companies talking about AI in that way, you've got a situation where, so Microsoft, for example, unsurprisingly selling AI based products to engineers or to technologists trying to create things on that platform, or more general tools for the general public. But I think their statement is, you don't need those junior mid engineers. We're automating all of this stuff. It's changing the way we work for the better, and it's driving huge amounts of efficiency that we've ever, never seen before. The reality on the ground, though, from people publishing some of this stuff under blogs that aren't meant to be from Microsoft employees, are saying, look, the reality is we're not using it in the way that we're marketing this. Actually, it's not. There was a really good piece on the lead, what was it? The lead dev. Oh, I've got it here actually. On the lead dev, have published a report on the use of AI, and I don't know if you've seen it.
Not seen it.
But yeah, it's a really interesting sort of summary. But within this, where was it? Within this piece, it talked a lot about AI usage. And if I can just try and dig it out clumsily right now. It was somewhere around here where it was saying, how's AI actually, here you go, how developments in the broadly defined AI space impact your engineering team's productivity. And most, 39% in the majority, sort of slight improvement on our engineering abilities,
Yeah.
with a lot of people talking about, no impact, moderate improvement. So it's not having this monumental shift in our craft, but it's relevant for people pushing tools on that to really say that, right?
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, because everyone's looking for that massive gain, and
Mm.
you need to remember that like silver bullet syndrome is a real thing, and you need to know that every tool can only have a certain amount of impact.
Mm.
It's not going to be this runaway thing. What it will do is subtly change how things can happen. And I think for me, it's rapid prototyping of UI in code is really good because you can get UI in front of people to play with
Mm.
before it goes into design. And the Neon team, Postgres database provider, they had a really good blog article where they were using V0 to come up with different potential concepts so they could see the interaction, but then they would actually put that through into someone with a design eye and then obviously into a front end engineer. So it's tricky because those are really experienced teams and they know the downfalls of the tech, so they're using it in the right way. Whereas
Mm.
some companies going out there saying, you can have non-technical people make software, and this feels cyclical because reminds me of like MS Access days where you have business users build a UI for a
Mm.
database, and then suddenly their whole business runs on this thing that one person in the corner hacked together without any coding knowledge whatsoever, and now their whole business relies on it. And yeah, you have
Yeah, it,
stories, don't you? Same thing with COBOL. It's like non programmers can now write business logic, and it's still you can't get rid of it in the banking system, for example. So
yeah, you have these sort of various reincarnations of low and no code, right? And I think that's exactly what you're referring to. I think the challenge is it's quite a damaging narrative. So I was chatting to a recruiter earlier, and they were saying, I've heard that there's no need for designers anymore because you've got all these solutions that can quickly put together apps and design apps for you. I was like, I think you may have misunderstood what you've heard through this, because what it's probably saying is the speed of prototyping and quickly mocking up ideas and quickly, testing and validating and discovering things has become easier because you can use AI prompts to drive the build of these things. But there is still a very quick, a quick step after that where you're gonna have to introduce a team that knows how to deal with that and how to productionize it.
and AI is never going to get stakeholder buy-in. It's never going to fight the corner for accessibility. It's never going to
Yeah,
make the right ethical decisions
yeah,
under lots of different pressures. You still need humans to do that and push for the right things, and
yeah,
really good designers know all that. And you can produce designs that users love, but you still got to convince one particular person at the client end that it's a good design, because you often
yeah,
get those stakeholders where they're just like, I don't like it, I want it to be, I don't know, this color or whatever, and it's completely inaccessible.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you got to fight the user's corner a bit, and that that bit doesn't go away. And
yeah.
yeah, it's just
I,
it's just really tricky because it is a very human process designing products, because it ultimately has to be used by people.
yeah, I think there's. I would probably welcome AI helping make the logo bigger, though, if that's any sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a reason we've seen a huge rise in the popularity of product management over the last 15 years or even less than that, and I think it's really important that we understand that human aspect of building good software is definitely understanding the requirements in more detail, like understanding how we can drive the impact and value of what we're building, and that is something that even if you craft the perfect prompt, is going to change over time, and it's not a static thing. You don't just build something once, ship it, and it stays like that forever. It's maintaining, supporting, evolving product, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's looking for those areas where AI can help, um, especially with like Genio product, like because you started really early on with AI note taking
Hmm.
before the AI faddiness came along, and it's just everyone now knows that it's massively useful as a memory prompt. But you also lose something, don't you? Where if you completely offload that to a machine, actually a lot of the memory formation happens when you write written notes and then type them up because you have another
Hmm.
chance to think about it. So you've got to really think, if I'm automating this to an extent, am I pulling some of the humanness out or some of the learning opportunity out
Yeah,
of that
yeah,
process? And I think we're going to see that with like AI summarization was always given as a really useful use case, and it is as a memory prompt, but it stops people doing the hard yards, like actually reading the article, actually getting into the detail. Because getting into the detail gives you the intuition to make the right decisions, whereas getting AI to summarize all the documents into bullets, you've missed out on the bit where you're subconsciously thinking on stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a bit of a tangent, but
No,
that's,
it's a tangent I'll happily entertain.
yeah,
We've submitted a little while ago a paper to UNESCO just to talk about the importance of productive friction, and like, friction should be a part of learning. It shouldn't be something that is just delivered to you. It's important there is some part of the process that you have to go through. I was chatting with Dave Tucker, the founder of Genio, and he was like, forging is a process, like the forging of creating an article or something. It's like there's a learning process, there's an iterative process that you have to go through. And I think it's very similar with learning.
yeah, definitely, and because it gives you an intuition about what's coming next, because you 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 need to be able to change your opinion quite quickly.
Mm,
It's like the whole strong opinions weakly held thing is so important in this kind of industry because stuff does change. So
mm,
me and you can have a very strong opinion about something today, and then it has to be able to shift.
mm.
Whereas if you haven't really got into the detail and thought about it and played with it, then yeah, you're not going to be able to change your opinion easily.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, and especially for leaders, and in leadership, you have to be willing to accept that your position may have changed based on new information, or you've just been convinced. Someone's taking you through a really reasoned argument, and you've actually seen the value that they're trying to talk about, and different perspectives always bring that, right? And yeah, I think I do sort of feel for leaders in this space at the moment, because not just because I'm one, but also because there's a huge amount of pressure to respond to this AI hype. How are you using AI in your process? How are you getting ahead of it? How are you driving efficiency? Because we need to save money, and we hear AI is the solution to that.
Yeah.
It's a really difficult thing to navigate.
Well, it's like oil and water sometimes especially with AI coding, because it works against some people's sort of feelings around programming so drastically that they just
Mm,
won't want to try it. Or they tried Copilot 3 years ago and it was a bit naff, and now they won't even give Cursor IDE a go. And like it, yeah, it's very tricky, and I can see why people want to cling on to how they used to do it.
mm,
But I do think there's something there, given that it can now sort of introspect. It can the linting comes back into it. Like it can help you think through and spot problems. So if you've submitted a small pull request for something,
mm,
AI spot security issues in that PR that other human reviewers wouldn't. And I just don't see what the friction is with some developers around using it in those sort of tactical ways. We're not saying vibe code a login system with a single prompt. That would be bad. But why wouldn't you use it to help scaffold some bits, some boilerplatey bits out? Or yeah, it's tricky. And if
yeah.
you're speaking to like particular people in like front end, and they've got very strong opinions, and they all come from a good place, but the conversation is not productive because it is that sort of like oil and water trying to mix, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So how do we have more productive conversations then? So what are the sort of key things that we need to do to have? Because I completely agree with you. As technologists, we need to be open to those different perspectives, to new techniques and tools, and it's not that you necessarily have to adopt them all. It's that you need to understand and be constantly evaluating these things.
Yeah.
Because as you said, like, these tools are changing so fast. Copilot is a completely different product it was a year ago. These things are changing on a monthly, weekly, daily basis now.
I think that to keep the conversation productive is to remember, like, for one person to be right, it doesn't mean that the other person is wrong. Like, it's
Yeah.
all on different scales. So, like, for me, AI assisted coding works really well with the way I like to work, because I
Mm,
feel like it gives me that productivity boost. Whereas if you're handcrafting um, a load of front end CSS, that there's probably stuff that I'm not aware of because that's not what I do. I don't do
mm,
that. So I've got a complete blind spot there where I'm like, I don't know if that's good or not because that's that's not where my skill set lives.
Mm.
So everyone's got all these blind spots, and they're all shouting and getting passionate about stuff, and it's causing a lot of noise, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this is where I think there needs to be a bit of a call to action to be like, if you don't have to use AI in your tool chain, but if you are going to use it and the results, the output is not good enough yet for what you're trying to do, then I think there's a real sort of call to action for improving that. Because it's infiltrated the toolbox. It's not going anywhere now. AI is a mainstay. It's not like it's going to go anywhere over the next year or two at least. And it's definitely going to be a big part of the legacy of how we've built software. So we need to sort of get familiar and comfortable with how we want to use it. And I think if it is crap at certain specialisms, or it is, it needs. The problem is, the reason this is a tricky debate is that it relies on decent training data and collaboration to improve these parts of the system. And I can completely understand the ethical side of the debate, which is, well, why should I train this stuff on my code that's going to add to some commercial gain for a huge corp?
Yeah, I guess just touching on the morality side, I guess the big argument which I do concede around that is that all the frontier models today have a murky, we crawled the entire internet foundation,
Mm.
which I think in 10, 20, 50 years, we'll look back and go, that probably wasn't the best way to kickstart this. But the problem is that it is out the bottle now, isn't it? And all we can do is figure out the best way to build better ethical frontier models on specifically opt-in data. And it is going to take a bit of time, but I'm confident, like, there's an EU initiative, and France are very keen on it. There's all sorts of things going on in the background where this will happen. Just like the movie studios will create models with purely opt-in actors and assets. But yeah, I think we can agree that there's probably been some murkiness in some of the training data.
Yeah, I think this is the sort of cost of innovation playing out, right? And I'm definitely not justifying that behavior, because I think it is murky and it is difficult to navigate, and there are lots of nuances to it. But I do think the challenge is, well, what's the alternative? And this is often brought to the debate. So if it wasn't done the way it was done, is there a more opt-in based approach where people, provide their data for that training, and then, then the models are sort of more ethically built? The problem is to get the volume of data that you need to produce models that perform the way that they do at the moment, is that I think it would take a very long time to get those submissions handcrafted and authorized from everyone. Now, that's not me saying that I agree with blatant copyright breach and just hoovering up everything off the internet.
Yeah. Well, another problem is a lot of open source models with open weights. They've been trained using the inputs and outputs from like your GPT-4s and stuff. So there's that whole traceability chain thing where you don't actually know how the sausage is made underneath. But yeah, like the open weight models, they still have that sort of legacy, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to just draw attention to is the part of the polarizing like debate around this, is that people get judged quite quickly if they're not jumping on the hype. And there's definitely a sort of a group of a group or a grouping of people on the internet that just want to completely ignore AI, and that is absolutely fine for many reasons. I think the main thing is that it's completely respectable to not add AI to your product for a load of really valid reasons, like the ethical considerations we just talked about, like they haven't found a valuable way to make it useful and to use it. And also, just maybe you have some conflicting challenges technically that don't allow you to implement it right now. It's not safe, or you're super cautious of the sort of user base that you're dealing with. At Genio, we deal with vulnerable, disabled users in a lot of cases, and it would be irresponsible just to throw things in without careful consideration, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a great quote from Rory Sutherland where he says, like, the opposite of a good idea is also a good idea, where it's like, if everyone's zigging, then does it make sense to zag? Do you want to be the company that doesn't do AI and the product that doesn't have AI? That can be a proposition in of itself. That can
Yeah.
be, you can find an audience for that, and users will get behind you and promote that kind of tech. I think the way I feel about it is that there's so many different elements to AI. Just vilifying the whole thing just feels a little bit counterintuitive. You just got to. It's just a lot more nuanced than that. And
Yeah.
uh, if you're saying you're a no AI product, does that mean you're not going to use large language models trained on data sets that you're not sure about, or does it mean that you're going to not use the most amazing like transcription service or whatever? Like, they're all very different questions, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because I think people can probably agree that transcription that's been trained on, a lot of those models have been trained on opt-in data, and they are
Mm.
getting really good now, where it even like picks up on like industry specific acronyms or like medical terms or whatever, and it's
Mm.
super impressive now. But why wouldn't you add that to your product if it's just there?
Yeah, especially if, ultimately, if it does, so in that case, it could improve the accessibility to your product. It could improve how inclusive some of this functionality is for your user base, and that can be really powerful too. I think that the point is these are all system design problems. These are all problems that we, it's our job as creators in this industry to solve. And I think there's always the considerations you have to have, like the technical, the compliance, the legal, ethical debates. It's important that you create strong governance around how you're utilizing this tech, like any other tech, right? As you said, it is just a tool, and it's how you use that tool, what tools you decide to use, what services, providers. It's completely within your control to decide how you harness AI. You don't have to use the off-the-shelf OpenAI models or anything else that is out there. Like, you could even decide to build and train your own if you wanted to, if you could justify the effort to do that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's just about having the right way to evaluate what the right decision is. So I did a talk quite a while ago around like ethics shopping, and like companies who will make a decision on one ethical framework and then switch depending on which suits them afterwards. So
Mm.
it's better to sort of, yeah, figure out your goalposts ahead of time and then see if you're within bounds, rather than what happens in a lot of companies is that those goalposts shift as they get closer to release or they get overexcited or whatever. And if that comes at the detriment to user privacy, security, or safety, then you need to have a hard look at that and make sure you're not making a compromised decision.
Yeah, exactly. I think the firm stance of building with integrity and ensuring like you've got the right checkpoints within the project to make sure you stick to that is really important. I think I saw a really good debate the other day around how like people who dismiss AI as just a tool, and if something bad happens, it's not the tool's fault, it's the user of the tool. And to a degree, I think back to the system design point, a tool that is built in a certain way encourages a particular type of behavior, and some of that behavior, as we're seeing, is not necessarily great. So we have some system design problems to solve to ensure that we encourage responsible use of AI and responsible integration of AI, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's a really good chat.
Nice. Well, I think we should probably end there then. That sounds good.
Thanks very much, Josh.